Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into a story that, well, it might just seem like one piece of news at first, but it really digs into some bigger questions about global health, about research. We're talking about an HIV vaccine trial that was stopped unexpectedly. And it makes you ask, how does global science actually work? Or sometimes, how does it get stopped in its tracks? Our source for this is The Independent Uganda from June 21st, 2025.
Yeah, and it's a really big deal. Finding an effective HIV vaccine, it's been a huge goal for, well, decades now. People sometimes call it the holy grail for immunology, right? A total game changer. So you hear about a trial being halted, especially for something this critical. You really have to pay attention. It usually signals there's something more complex going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely. I mean, an HIV vaccine trial halted, that's jarring, especially when you read it had already gotten approval in Zambia. So my first thought is, what happened? Why the sudden stop? What does the source say?
Well, the direct reason, according to the report, is funding. The United States, specifically USI, the United States Agency for International Development, they withdrew the funding for this project. USI, for anyone maybe not familiar, is the main U.S. government body for foreign aid, including a lot of global health work. And what's really striking is the timing. Zambia's National Biosafety Authority gave the trial the green light in January 2025, but the funding was pulled just a month later, in February.
Wow, January approval, February defunding, that's incredibly fast. The report mentions William Kilembe. He's the project director at the Center for Family Health Research in Zambia, CFHRZ, and he confirmed this cut.
He did. He was very clear. The quote reads, "There is no funding." He went on, "Just like any program, it's the same reason why other USAID-funded programs are not going on." This was a USAID-funded project in collaboration with the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative. That's IAVI, by the way. And he stressed that all activities, including vaccine research, design, and other related work, have been discontinued.
Discontinued, so a complete shutdown, everything.
Exactly. But there's another layer here that Kilembe pointed out, which is really important for you, the listener, to get. He clarified the type of trial this was. He said the research was not necessarily intended to lead directly to an HIV prevention vaccine, but was rather an early phase clinical trial or proof of concept study.
Okay, proof of concept. What does that mean in this context? Is it less important somehow?
Oh, not at all. If anything, it's foundational. Think of it like testing the basic idea. Does this new approach even work biologically? Does it trigger the kind of immune response you're hoping for? Is it safe enough to even think about bigger trials later on? So that very first hurdle, if you can't clear that, you don't move forward. So halting a proof of concept study, it basically stops any future work that might have built on that specific idea. And the fact that IAVI was involved, they're a major global player, HIV vaccine work, that just highlights how significant this was considered.
Right, that makes sense. It's the first step, but a critical one. And you mentioned earlier this might not be just about this one Zambian project. The source, The Independent Uganda, says Zambia is among several countries affected by recent cuts in U.S. government funding to the health sector. So this is potentially a wider issue.
It seems so. And if you zoom out, you start to see the broader implications. When major funding for global health initiatives gets cut, especially in regions that rely heavily on that support, the impact is huge. These aren't just isolated projects. They're often part of complex international partnerships built over many years. Think about the expertise, the shared resources.
The trust involved.
Exactly. When funding suddenly becomes shaky or just disappears, it damages that trust. It disrupts long-term health strategies. And it can lead to, well, what people call brain drain. Talented researchers might leave, teams get broken up, specialized facilities might struggle. You lose momentum. The article doesn't specify why USAID pulled the funding. In this case, these things can be complicated, tied to politics, budgets, shifting priorities. But whatever the reason, the effects on the ground are real and damaging.
That phrase, brain drain, always sounds so clinical, but you're talking about people, right? Researchers who've maybe spent years on this, building expertise, dedicating their careers, and then, poof, the funding's gone because of a decision made thousands of miles away. That uncertainty, it must be devastating. So what does this disruption, this specific halt, mean for the bigger picture, for the fight against HIV overall?
Well, it raises some really tough questions for us all, doesn't it? When you stop foundational research, even if it's labeled just proof of concept, what happens next? It's not only about losing that one specific potential pathway. It's about the ripple effect. Future research that might have depended on those findings gets delayed, maybe canceled entirely. You lose time, you lose momentum. And in the fight against a disease like HIV, time is absolutely critical. Plus, it undermines the efforts of countries like Zambia to build their own research capacity. That's a setback, too.
So it really highlights how interconnected everything is. Global health isn't just about individual projects. It's this whole ecosystem that relies on stable support. When you pull one thread, like funding for an early trial,
The whole fabric can weaken. Precisely. Medical progress, especially for something as tough as HIV, it doesn't just happen. It needs sustained funding, it needs long-term vision, it needs collaboration across borders. When a major funder like USA pulls back, even from one project, it sends a message. So this specific story from Zambia, while tragic in itself, it really serves as a kind of case study. It shows how global health research is funded, how it's kept going, and how fragile it can sometimes be.
Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've unpacked here. We looked at this specific HIV vaccine trial in Zambia. It was halted. The reason. Funding withdrawal by USAID, the U.S. Development Agency. We learned it was an early stage proof of concept study, a crucial first step, not the final product. And importantly, this isn't just a one-off. It seems to be part of a wider pattern of U.S. funding cuts affecting health in several countries.
Right. And that leaves us with a really important thought to consider. What's the actual cost here? Not just the money that was withdrawn, but the cost in lost time, lost potential, maybe even lost breakthroughs down the line. When essential health research gets stopped short because funding priorities shift somewhere else, what are those ripple effects? Especially in the global fight against diseases like HIV, it forces you to think about the whole hidden machinery behind scientific progress, the years of work, the people, the consistent support it needs, and how vulnerable that foundation can sometimes feel.